So this man just won the Netherlands elections by the biggest gap in the past 20 years. Check him out.
Moroccans are overrepresented enormously in the Dutch crime statistics. More than 60% of the Moroccan youth under the age of 23 has been arrested by the Dutch police.
Because these people are Moroccan, or is that also because they are unemployed?
I'm not a psychologist or sociologist. I don't care why people are criminals.
So his name is Geert Wilders. He's a fascinating guy and is a very outspoken personality and completely non-apologetic by saying things like this.
If one country is tougher on its immigration policy than the other, then the most immigrants go to the country with the softest immigration policy.
And then saying things like this.
Free Tommy Robinson.
And then this.
If I would become the Prime Minister of the Netherlands next year, after I would win the elections, close the Dutch borders for immigrants from Islamic countries immediately.
You'd only be able to do that, of course, if you followed Britain out of the European Union.
Exactly. I mean, in order, we transferred our sovereign rights, not only when it comes to our monetary policy or our budgetary policy, but also our immigration policy. We transfer that to Brussels. So we have to regain our
So you would hold a referendum?
We would hold a referendum in the Netherlands for what we call a Nexit, the Dutch leaving, in order to be able to toughen up our immigration policies. It cannot be done, and it will not be done by Brussels and the European Union. You have to become a sovereign nation again in order to do that.
And then even this.
We should stand with every nation and every people threatened by Islamic Jihad. But especially, if you allow me, we should stand with the country that I love so much, namely the state of Israel.
So as you can hear by his statements and by his positions, he's not a fan of Islamization. He's anti-immigration from Muslim countries, is anti-Islamization of the Netherlands and the rest of the European Union, and is a very pro-Israel guy. In fact, he said that Israel should exist from the river to the sea and that all Palestinians should move to Jordan. That's one of his many statements. So how the hell did this guy manage to win by such a huge landslide? Well, the Netherlands political system is a little bit different than the US. They don't have a president. They have a prime minister, which is based on a parliamentary system. There's 150 seats in their parliament, and the party that gets the most amount of seats gets to negotiate with other parties and form a coalition to then elect a prime minister. Essentially, a clusterfuck. So basically, this party and this guy, Geert Wilders, went up from 17 seats to 37 seats in just a year, essentially getting the most seats of any Dutch parties in the past 20 years. They've absolutely won by a landslide, which means that he will actually get to determine who's going to be the next prime minister, assuming, of course, he can form a coalition that will give him the majority of the seats. Let's assume right now that if he gets to 75 seats in this coalition, he gets to be the next prime minister. He currently has 37, so that means he needs another 40 or so. Now, here's the crazy part. His campaign was not even about these crazy opinions we just mentioned in the beginning. It was about a whole different topic. Because as I said in the Javier Milei video, James Carville called it first. It's always and always and always about the economy. There ain't nobody who ever lost an election about Israel or the Palestinians or their opinions about Islamization. It's always, always about the economy. And in the case of Netherlands, they're struggling with massive issues like cost of living going through the roof, a massive housing shortage. You see, after 13 years of the previous government, Netherlands had gotten to a point where there's a huge loss of trust between its people and the government. This was an impotent government filled with scandals, zero accountability, and the complete destruction of the Netherlands system. We had scandals such as tax officials blaming parents of fraud based on ethnic profiling. We had farmers in the Netherlands being abused by its own government for nitrogen emissions? Really? 2023 with the war in Europe and that whole thing? We had massive fatigue from this backroom dealings between the EU and the Dutch government and the total submission of the Dutch government to this whole woke policies. You go woke, you go broke. Because this is literally what happened. Cost of living in the Netherlands went through the roof, and I believe that is what won him the election. He ran on that mainly. The secondary thing he ran on was the housing crisis. He's basically saying, look, we have a housing shortage right now in the Netherlands. We're taking all these immigrants We don't have enough houses for our own people. And that's actually, it's a reasonable, logical position. So he's basically saying, look, I'm going to solve the housing shortage and I'm going to solve the cost of living problems. They're very similar to Javier Milei, if you kind of follow it. The 13-year rule of the previous prime minister on how bad it's gotten basically gave him this on a silver platter. It had nothing to do with his politics about Israel and anti-Islamism and all that stuff. In fact, in his latest campaign, this whole anti-Islamist thing was actually toned down, and he was talking way more about the economy. Now, if you look back for the past 13 years, I mean, if you talk about the Argentinian government fucking it up, this government had really horrible track record. So the previous prime minister, he let Shell, the oil company, evade taxes in 2019. And then when they actually said, oh, now you have to start paying taxes, Shell just relocated to the UK. We had Booking.com actually get massive subsidies from the Dutch government, which it then used to not pay taxes and buy back shares with government subsidy money. Like insane things. Can Geert Wilders actually be the prime minister of Netherlands? Well, it's not very likely, but it is possible. You see, he needs another two parties to combine with him to get that 75 seats. And as much as politicians hate him and do not want to associate with him because they think he's radioactive, now that he has 37 seats and he's extremely popular, he's just too big to ignore. They actually have to talk with him. So while I'm not saying that there's 100% chance he's going to be the next prime minister of the Netherlands, he definitely has a chance because with 37 seats, he's going to be the big swinging banana in the room and he's going to call a lot of the shots. Now, he did say some crazy stuff for a European leader in 2023, such as, I visited many countries, but I've never felt more at home than in the state of Israel. Now, with the exception of Javier Milei, which said similar things just a few days ago, this is a very unusual statement from an EU leader. And statements like this basically got him on the Al-Qaeda death list for the past 10 years. He has 24/7 security and is serious security. He also said that Erdogan, the Turkish president, is an Islamist and is a dangerous guy. He's very popular, Geert Wilders, with the young people, which usually you don't see with these guys. So very, very popular with the young people. Very similar to Javier Milei, right? He's full on Israel. He's full on anti-immigration, specifically from Muslim countries. He wants to implement the same model of Poland and Hungary, basically blocking immigration from Muslim countries. He wants to disengage, similarly to UK, from the EU. He wants a Nexit, Netherlands exit, like a Brexit. And of course, there's a bunch of statements we can show here, such as saying that there's a lot of Islamist traitors within the Dutch government, but that's not where he won the elections. And that's not where the previous Prime Minister, Rutte, actually lost his. So people in the Netherlands basically said, we had enough of this shit. Very, very similar to Javier Milei. They elected this guy. He's very, very out there, but he has strong opinions. Let's see how he can make it.